Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a news item on page number 1 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu, relevant for GS paper 2. Kerala High Court restrains centre on IT rules. Now let's understand this newspaper article in slight detail. We have covered this news in the past as well, but let's try and cover this news from a different perspective. We have a law called Information Technology Act, which was passed by the Parliament in the year 2000. What was the objective of this law? The objective was to provide legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange and other means of electronic communication. Now, let me try and make it very simple for you to understand. Let's say, for example, we have a contract between you and me. This contract is signed by you and me, and this contract is signed on a piece of paper, and this piece of paper is valid. But now, because of information technology boom, contracts can be done electronically as well. That means between you and me over Gmail for that matter. In this context, will this contract which is signed electronically, will this contract also be valid? For that, there has to be a law which will say, yes, this contract is valid because it is signed electronically. One of the objectives of this Information Technology Act of the year 2000 was to provide legal recognition to such transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange. Because Information Technology Act, what it does, it provides legal recognition to the use of such alternatives to paper-based methods of communication. There are other reasons as well why this law was passed, but I'm just trying to simplify it. This act, Information Technology Act of 2000, it also provides for regulation of electronic content. But regulation how? Only in two distinct ways. Number one, if you are using electronic exchange and thereby you are committing some offenses such as cyber terrorism, you are publishing obscene material, sexually explicit material, or child pornography, Information Technology Act will cover such offenses as well. Second, blocking of sites under section 69 capital A. For example, when there were skirmishes along the line of actual control between India and China, it also led to Government of India taking some actions, taking some steps against the Chinese companies. TikTok, for example, and 59 other apps were banned. On what grounds? Under section 69 capital A. Because this empowers the central government. This section empowers the central government that what central government you can do? You can block these intermediaries such as apps, such as websites, such as online content if it is in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, defense of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign countries, public order, so on and so forth. So these are the two distinct ways in which electronic content can be regulated by the central government. If the content is obscene, or if the content is against the sovereignty and integrity of India. Now, under this law, what has now happened? The Government of India has announced rules. Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code. These are the rules of 2021. To make it simple for you, this is basically the example of a delegated legislation. Or this delegated legislation is also known as subordinate legislation. Why? Because Parliament or legislature for that matter passes a broad law. But to implement this law, rules are to be framed. Rules have to be framed, and these rules are framed by the central government, which basically means law is passed by the legislature. But to effectively implement this law, for that rules are to be made. And these rules are to be made by the executive. But these rules shall have to conform to the law passed by the Parliament. If these rules are against the provisions of the law, then these rules are liable to be struck down by the courts. In fact, there is another way. There is a parliamentary committee on subordinate legislation. That means to check whether these rules are in agreement with the laws passed by the parliament or not. These rules are to be checked by the legislative committee. That means there is a legislative oversight. Members of the legislature will look into, identify, and look at all these rules one by one to see that they are in conformity with the law passed by the parliament. Critics say that this Act of Information Technology Act, it does not talk about regulating online news portals. How do these rules regulate online news portals, for example? Let's say, for example, this is a news portal X. X publishes various articles, X publishes interviews, X publishes opinions of various important personalities, activists, writers, so on and so forth. Now, if you're not happy as an individual with the content which is published on these online news portals, then these rules, what they say number one, there has to be a three-tier structure. These rules introduce a three-tier structure to ensure observance and adherence to the code of ethics by digital media publishers. And there are three levels, three tiers. Level number one, self-regulation by the publishers. Let's say, for example, the content is uploaded on this news portal X. Any person having a complaint against this article written on an online news portal, you can file a complaint. And this news portal X, what it has to do, it has to have a grievance redressal officer. So as an individual, if you're not happy, if you feel that the content on this online news portal is wrong, bad, fake news, half-truth, obscene, so on and so forth, you can file a first level complaint with the grievance redressal officer who should be set up by this news portal X. But if this grievance redressal officer, he does not act on the complaint filed by you, then you have the option of moving up the level. You have the option of moving to level 2. And what is level 2? Here is a news portal X. There can be a news portal Y as well, news portal Z as well, news portal P as well. All these news portals, they will set up a committee. This committee will basically be a self-regulating committee. That means a self-regulating committee of a group of online news portals. And then you can take this complaint to this self-regulating committee. Even then, if you're not satisfied, then what you can do, you can move up the level 3. This is the oversight mechanism by the central government, which means basically officials of the central government, officials of the various ministries will look into your complaint, and if it is happy with your complaint, it will direct this news portal, please remove this content from your news portal. Critics say that this is something which leads to something called censorship. What is censorship? Basically something which happened during emergency. When newspapers had to publish something, first they had to seek the permission of the government of India. Once the permission of the government of India was given, then the newspapers were allowed to be published. So basically, if you're not happy with the content which is written on this news portal X, but this content is not wrong, this content is not bad, this content is not non-factual, in that case, you can approach the level 3 oversight committee. The committee will direct, which is the committee of the government officials. This committee will direct this news portal to drop that content. And this is what leads to censorship. That's what critics say. So basically they say government gets to decide what to publish and what not to publish. In addition to that, there is another thing. The secretary of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, this secretary has an emergency power. What is this emergency power? This secretary can order that this particular article on this news portal X should be blocked. And while exercising this emergency power, the secretary of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, it need not even give an opportunity to this news portal to defend itself. That means Secretary of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has a power to pass order blocking any content even without giving the opportunity of any hearing. Critics also raise a very important and critical issue. They say whether news agencies and commentators on current affairs should be subjected to code of ethics or not. That is not the question. That's a separate matter altogether. Should there be rules which can govern fake news, half-truth, obscene content? Yes. But the question is whether regulation and oversight by the government or its agents can be prescribed by the rules when they are not contemplated by the parent act. Because I told you that Information Technology Act, it deals with the regulation of content, but only in two ways. And these are the two distinct ways by which the central government can regulate content on the online media. But this Act of 2000 does not empower the government, does not empower the state to establish the code of ethics for these online news portals. That means these rules are basically ultra vires. They violate the parent law, which is the Information Technology Act 2000. When the law does not talk about regulating this content, how can the rules under this law impose a code of ethics for online news portals? That's problem number one. And problem number two, the bone of contention is that having this three-level structure or three-tier structure, it may lead to a situation where the government dictates what to publish, what not to publish. And it will lead to a regime of censorship. There is another critical issue. The rules say that you have to track the originators of the information. Let's say, for example, here is information X, which is fake, or which incites people to violence, or which is obscene. The rules say that this message X or this information X should be tracked so that we can get to know who is the originator of this information. And prima facie, it looks a very good, noble thing to do because we need to identify those who cause mischief in our society. But the fact is, what about WhatsApp? What about Signal? The messages on WhatsApp and Signal, they are end-to-end encrypted. That means the government cannot know who is the originator of these messages on WhatsApp and Signal because these are end-to-end encrypted. And at the same time, even the WhatsApp will not know what is the message that you are transmitting from your mobile phone to the mobile phone of your friend because these messages are not stored and these messages are not read by WhatsApp and Signal. And if these intermediaries, if WhatsApp or Signal is forced to track the originator of this information, it violates a right to privacy, which is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. And that is what this newspaper article is all about. Kerala High Court restrains centre on IT rules. The Kerala High Court has asked the centre don't take action, coercive steps against Live Law, which owns a legal news portal, because this legal news portal has filed a petition challenging the constitutional validity of these IT rules of 2021. Now let's look at another newspaper article, very important for your civil services examination. India not part of Russian meet on Afghanistan. Now let's understand this newspaper article in slight detail. If you look at Afghanistan, Afghanistan is famously known as graveyard of empires. Whoever has tried to colonize Afghanistan, that entity, that state has faced defeat. And this happened with the English because of Anglo-Afghanistan wars. This happened with USSR when USSR was defeated by Afghanistan, which also later on led to the dismemberment of USSR. And this also happened to some extent with the United States of America. How? The year was 2001. 9/11 attacks took place. Terrorists belonging to Al-Qaeda, a terror organization headed by Osama bin Laden, hijacked planes and tried to attack United States of America. Two planes which were hijacked, they stormed into World Trade Towers, World Trade Centers. One of the plane, it attacked Pentagon, which is the defense establishment of the United States. Another plane, it tried to attack the White House, which is the official residence of the President of the United States, but it was shot down near Pennsylvania. And if you look at the world changed after 9/11. So if you have to break the world into two broad timelines, we can say there was a world prior to 9/11, there is a world after 9/11. George W. Bush was the president of the United States of America. He declared war on terror. Osama bin Laden was hiding in Afghanistan. Afghanistan then was controlled and ruled by Taliban. The United States, while launching war on terror, is asking the Taliban government in Afghanistan, just do one thing, hand over Osama bin Laden to us. But the Taliban authorities decided and declined to offer Osama bin Laden to United States, and ultimately in October, the war was launched against Afghanistan, and US troops as well as the NATO troops, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, their troops landed on Afghanistan and a war broke out. And this war ultimately led to the defeat of Taliban. But although Taliban was defeated, Taliban was moved out of power. Later on, Osama bin Laden was also captured and then he was killed in Abbottabad in Pakistan, which was very close to the Pakistani army headquarters. But be that as it may, the point is that Osama bin Laden was arrested and killed. Taliban was defeated. In Afghanistan, there was democracy restored. But even then, violence continued. Taliban still continued. Vast areas of land in Afghanistan. There were terror attacks mounted by Taliban against the US Army, against the NATO forces, against the Afghanistan civilian population, against the police and the army of Afghanistan. Basically, although the war ended, but peace could not be restored in Afghanistan. And then there was a policy of Barack Obama. When he was the president of the United States, what he tried to do, he tried to limit the forces of United States on Afghanistan soil, so that slowly and steadily the number of troops of United States in Afghanistan would come down. But then came Donald J. Trump. And Donald J. Trump said, why should we fight other countries' wars? And it is the endeavor of my government, says Donald Trump, that we will end our troops' presence in Afghanistan. And he made a promise to the war veterans. He made a promise to the soldiers of US Army that we will take you back. I'm going to take you back to your families. We are going to exit Afghanistan. But if United States wanted to exit, it also wanted an honorable exit. And what is this honorable exit? So that the world does not say, the world does not tell United States that you fought a war in Afghanistan, but you could not restore peace and democracy in Afghanistan. For that, the United States realized that what we need to do, we need to bring Taliban on the negotiating table. Taliban should cut its ties with Al-Qaeda. Taliban should not be involved with Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Taliban should renounce terror. It should come on the negotiating table and it should take part in democratic politics. And there was one country which was responsible for bringing Taliban on the negotiating table, and that country was Pakistan. And then what happened? Few important countries such as Russia, China, United States, some members of the United Nations Security Council, permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, and Pakistan. They came together. Various rounds of talks were held in Qatar, where Taliban was involved to sit on the negotiating table, and ultimately some sort of compromise was sought to be achieved. But in all of this, if there was one country which was not involved in these talks, in these Afghanistan peace talks, that was India. Despite the fact that we have very important stake in Afghanistan. A stable Afghanistan is very important for India. A peaceful, prosperous Afghanistan is very important for India. Despite the fact that after the fall of Taliban in the early 2000s, we have invested a lot in Afghanistan. But India was kept out of this negotiating table. Then a couple of days ago, what happened? United States had a new plan. Now we have a new government in United States headed by Joe Biden. Joe Biden also believes that we should exit from Afghanistan. And in all likelihood, if reports are to be believed, United States wants to exit its final 2,500 troops from Afghanistan by May 1 this year. And for that, Taliban has to come on the negotiating table again. The final talks have to be taken through its logical conclusion. And United States proposed a formula. United States said there should be a United Nations regional conference on Afghanistan. And in this regional conference on Afghanistan, India was also invited. But now, parallel to this United Nations regional conference, Russia has set up another meeting. And in this meeting, we will have United States, China, Pakistan participating, representatives from Kabul participating, the civilian administration in Kabul, Taliban will be participating, but Russia has excluded India. Let's see what happens because of these talks, as a result of these talks. But from the civil services examination point of view, what is it that we need to understand? Donald J. Trump, way back in January 2019, he made a statement. He said, I get along very well with India. I get along very well with Prime Minister Modi, but he constantly keeps telling me that he has built a library in Afghanistan. That's like 5 hours of what we have spent in Afghanistan. I don't know who is using this library. Who said this? Donald Trump. But he's wrong. Why? Because we have done a lot in Afghanistan. What have we done? This is something that can be asked in your civil services examination. We have constructed and built Afghanistan's parliament in Kabul. Not just that, we have restored Tor Palace in Kabul. Not just that, we have rebuilt schools in Afghanistan. Not just that, we have constructed Salma Dam in Afghanistan. Not just that, we have laid electricity transmission line from Pule Khumri to Kabul. Not just that, we have constructed a cricket stadium in Kabul. Not just that, we have upgraded telephone exchanges in some provinces. And not just that, Chitmala Power Substation in Kabul. And much more. If we look at Afghanistan, we have vital interests in Afghanistan. Interest number one is Afghanistan has to be stable. Because if Taliban comes back to power in Afghanistan, Taliban and Pakistan, they are very close to each other. And if we do not engage with Taliban, it might lead to a situation where we will see terrorists getting infiltrated into India. That is why we need to be involved in these talks, and we need to have a stake in these talks, and we need to ensure that the government which is established in Afghanistan is not inimical to India. We have second interest, and which is to counter Pakistan's influence. That is why we need to get involved in Afghanistan. And third, we have to secure Kabul's friendship. Because let's not forget, when IC-814, which was an Indian Airlines plane in the late 1990s, it was hijacked. And then ultimately this plane went to Dubai for refueling purposes. And this plane then landed in Kandahar. And Kandahar then was the capital of Afghanistan. And ultimately what we had to do in exchange for the hostages, in exchange for the passengers who were taken hostage by the terrorists, we had to exchange 3 dreaded terrorists. We had to release 3 dreaded terrorists. One such dreaded terrorist was Mushtaq Zargar, the other was Umar Saeed, and third was Masood Azhar. And Masood Azhar, when he was released, later on he founded a terrorist organization called Jaish-e-Mohammed, which was responsible for the parliament attack, which was responsible for the Pathankot attack, which was responsible for the Uri attack, which was responsible for the February 2019 attack in Pulwama. So that is why we need Kabul's friendship, which basically means Taliban's friendship, if we have to secure our security. And for that, there is one thing very important. This is Zaranj Dilaram Road. It is very important for India as well as for Afghanistan. Why? Afghanistan is a landlocked country. Its way passes through Pakistan. But if Afghanistan has to get in touch with India, it has to pass through Pakistan. If India has to get in touch with Afghanistan, it has to pass through Pakistan. What if Pakistan blocks it? There is an alternative. What is the alternative? Zaranj Dilaram Road. This Zaranj Dilaram Road, it leads to the Iran border, and through this Iran border, we can reach up to this Chabahar port. That means through Chabahar port, then Afghanistan will have a link with India bypassing Pakistan. And this is very important for both Afghanistan as well as India. Again, there is something else. Shahtut Dam Project. In February 2021, a memorandum of understanding was signed between India and Afghanistan. Because of this memorandum of understanding, what will happen? India will be responsible and will aid the construction of this Shahtut Dam project. Then because of this project, what will happen? Because of this dam project, more Kabul river waters, they will stop in Afghanistan. When they will stop in Afghanistan, thereby reducing the amount of water which will flow downstream to Pakistan. And that is why this Shahtut Dam project is also very important. And if you look at this Zaranj Dilaram Road, the construction of this road was financed and completed by India. That is why we have vital interest in Afghanistan. That is why we need to be on the negotiating table. We need to be involved in these talks between Taliban and the other world powers so that our influence in Afghanistan does not go waste. And at the same time, we need to seek the friendship of Afghanistan, which is very important for our vital interests. Now let's look at a very important column, a case for a revamped, need-based public distribution system. We have something called PDS, which is Public Distribution System. It is through this PDS that essential commodities to a large section of our population is distributed. And this PDS is jointly operated by both the center as well as state governments. What central government does? Central government through FCI, which is the Food Corporation of India. What it does, it procures, it stores, it transports these food grains to the states. And what is the responsibility of the states? What the states do, they identify eligible beneficiaries. What the states do, they issue ration cards. What the states do, they supervise FPS, which is what we call fair price shops. There are more than 5 lakh such shops in this country. It is at these fair price shops that eligible beneficiaries who are identified by the state governments, they receive subsidized food grains, for example, rice, wheat, etc. When the central government gives these food grains to the states, what is the price which is charged by the center? This price is what we call CIP, and CIP is what we call the central issue price. Then we have something called National Food Security Act, which was passed by the Indian Parliament in the year 2013. Under this National Food Security Act, 2/3 of our population is eligible for subsidized food grains. Every beneficiary should be given 5 kg of rice or wheat in a particular month. So what you need to understand, there is something called public distribution system. Then there is the role of the central government and the states in these food grains. Then there is this central issue price. Then there is National Food Security Act. If these concepts are clear, let's jump to economic survey, which was recently tabled by the central government in the parliament. Economic survey, it has flagged a very important concern. And that concern is India's growing food subsidy bill. An economic survey says it is this India's growing food subsidy bill which is becoming unmanageably large. Economic survey says the expectation is that in very near future, this food subsidy bill is going to cross 2.5 lakh crores. But to tackle this issue, economic survey is hinting at something. and it is hinting at increase in this central issue price. How? This central issue price for wheat, for example, it is 2 rupees per kg. For rice, for example, it is 3 rupees per kg. That means when the central government is sending these food grains to the states, what is the price that the central government charges the state governments? 2 rupees per kg for wheat, 3 rupees per kg for rice. Then we have these states. These states then give and supply these food grains. There is something called retail price. That means at what price, at what cost, these food grains are then given by the state government. The retail price is zero. Where? In Karnataka and West Bengal. All those beneficiaries of Antyodaya Anna Yojana, those who are holding Antyodaya Anna Yojana ration cards, or those who belong to priority households, for such individuals, for such beneficiaries, the retail price is zero. That means given free of cost. In Odisha, for example, the price is rupee 1. In Tamil Nadu, it is free. Free not only to those who are eligible beneficiaries, not only to those who have Antyodaya Anna Yojana ration cards, not only to those who belong to priority households, but it is free for everybody. And then there is politics. Because free food grains, free ration is something on which almost all the political parties, they contest the elections. Which basically means if economic survey is hinting that the central issue price will be increased, but if it does not lead to an increase in the retail price, what will happen? Additional burden on the states. And the states will not be in a position to bear this burden. So what is the solution? The solution is that we need to have a relook. Relook is solution number 1. National Food Security Act, for example, today it covers 2/3 of our population, 67% of our population. Why can't we do one thing? Let's make National Food Security Act eligible for only 40% of our population. That's solution number 1. Solution number 2 is we need to have another option such as give up option. For example, if you look at one of the very important initiatives of the Prime Minister was the Pehel scheme. If you are somebody who is not poor, you can give up your LPG subsidy. That means you can say, I do not need the LPG subsidy, I am giving it up. Similar thing we need to do for food grains as well. We should have this option, give up option. There is third thing that we can do. We can incentivize. Whom? States. For what? If the states are able to prune the list of beneficiaries. That means if the states are in a position to reduce the number of beneficiaries so that free food grains or subsidized food grains are available only to the most needy, not to everybody. The more pruning that a state government does, more incentives should be provided to those states. There is fourth option. We can introduce a slab system. And what is the slab system? For most needy people, there should be one rate. For others, they should be able to pay more. But all of this needs one thing, and that is political will. Let's hope we have a political will of solving this problem in our country. Let's hope. And hope is a beautiful thing. Let's hope. If you have liked this video, you can press the like button. And then see you tomorrow. Till then, have a great time.